Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Chat room's filled up already, eh? Robin, Shalini, David, Beats and Tapes. Who else we got? Come on, stop lurking. There's more than that there. Isn't there? No? Yeah, there must be. We've got 23 people tonight. That's excellent already. Both streams are going, so Darren, good to see you, Darren. I've had a lot of conversation with Darren recently. All good stuff as well. I like a bit of interaction, so keep it coming. This stream will be free tonight, but nobody's paid recently, so you're getting a bonus. The vertical stream does have adverts on it, because I think only one person's ever paid on the vertical stream. But hey, Vaughn as well. Good grief. Good to see Vaughn. I hope you and Shalini had a great time in Ireland. Excellent. Speaking of Ireland, that's what tempted me or tripped me up today when I saw that Graham Linehan had been arrested on Twitter, and I thought, what? Graham Linehan? What for? That man's a comedic genius. So we'll dig into that in a minute. What else has happened? Well, we're not going to go into much else. We're going to go down this route because I've done some digging today and I've found out some stuff. And, you know, I've not spent a lot of time on it because I had to do some work this afternoon, but I've done enough, I think, to give us a passable representation at what has happened and why Graham's in the situation that I think he's in. Yeah, you're a jailbird now, Father Linehan. Yeah, that would be right enough. Espresso Mechanic TV, good to see you here as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through it, and we're going to then do a bit of a digging. All the receipts are accounted for. What I'll do is I'll put the full report as such up on sergeantgrumpy.com, and you can go through that at your leisure. Either tomorrow or tonight, or well, probably tomorrow morning I'll put it up. And I'll put the other stuff that supported the other 2 days that we've been doing as well. And I'll try and keep to that kind of schedule. You know, we'll do the video presentation, and then we'll put up the receipts, if you like, the supporting evidence, because I like to be evidence-based. I don't like to take people's word for things. Trust me, bro, stories isn't going to cut it here. We need to have some solid, actual, verifiable facts, and I think we've got some tonight. And I think you're going to like this one. I think you're going to like it. Right. So Graham Linehan got lifted at Heathrow 3 days ago, and he was apprehended by 5 armed officers. Now, that in itself seems a bit overkill, doesn't it? 5 armed officers. And you know what armed police in the airport look like? They're armed to the teeth. They've got carbines, pistols, tasers, all done up in their gear. You know, look like soldiers. That's overkill. Why not a couple of cops, or even, you know, I know you call them bobbies down there. Why not just a couple of cops, or why not even a couple of guys from Special Branch or from CID or whatever in suits? Just go and pick them up. They don't even need to be good suits. They could be from Slater's, where every cop gets a interest-free account. Did you know that? If you're in the police, you get a credit account at Slater's that you can have interest-free. Right. Anyway, moving on. So that was a show, wasn't it? That was just a show. Because that's all that does. It just shows people that we're tough. We're going to act. What are you acting on? That's the question. What are you acting on? Right. If you guys think, if you think it was overkill, well, I tell you what. I've written out my script. So my script says, if you think 5 armed coppers for hurt feelings on Twitter are reasonable, type 2. If you think we've officially lost the plot and that was, you know, too much, type 1. And all you need to do is type that in the chat, and then we'll see how many 1s and 2s we get. So that would be quite good. See if you're listening to me, see if we get some interaction going, rather than doing polls, because they take ages. Right. I'll come back to that and see if anybody actually does have a keyboard. Then again, if you don't have a keyboard, that's the problem, isn't it? Now, let's start with our man Graham then. So, the comedy genius behind Father Ted and the IT Crowd. Brilliant, brilliant comedies. Proper comedy. Not sanitised shit that we get these days. He lands at Heathrow after getting on a plane in Arizona, but all the shenanigans start before he even gets on the plane in Arizona because he doesn't have a seat. It has to be reticketed. Your seat isn't available. We're going to have to reticket you. Bing, 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 bing. Alarm should be going off at this point because that's as a result of a call coming in. Oh, what's wrong with the vertical? It should be running. Why would you say that? Is it not running? Let me see. Sorry. Oh, it doesn't appear to be running. Why is it not running? Bear with me, people. Bear with me. It wasn't running. Right, the vertical's running now. Sorry about that. If you're just waiting for the vertical chat or the vertical stream, you are live now. We had a technical glitch there for some reason. OBS decided to not start it when it started the other one. But thank you, David. You get your gold star tonight. Let's see if this works. So there we go. Lucky Charms. He gets his gold star. Well done, Lucky Charms. Right. Where was I? So, complications with his seat, gets reticketed. Alarm bells are ringing at this point in my head because I even freak out a bit when I travel with my wife because she keeps getting those 4Ss, you know, for the enhanced security check and gets swabbed down and all that. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? You know, that shouldn't be happening. I mean, I don't get them. She does. But anyway, maybe she's... maybe it's a Mr. and Mrs. Smith situation. Hi, Julie. Right. Anyway, so he arrives at Heathrow and 5 armed cops grab him or take him to a room. And he says it's not that unpleasant, but it's not what I expected. And he said they were decent enough to put him in a private vehicle to take him across the car park so he didn't get perp walked through the airport. But he's held in Heathrow's in-house police station and then he's questioned. And there's an interview, he undergoes an interview after being processed and searched. And as a result of all this, his blood pressure, as you can imagine, is going sky high. Middle-aged guy, a bit like me, probably a bit sedentary. He doesn't look like he does an awful lot of training. No offence, Graham, if you're listening. So he gets taken to A&E. His blood pressure is found to be like 200 or something. Yeah, the high end, which isn't great. I mean, that is technically putting you into stroke territory. So he gets kept in there for observations and then out later on. But when I say swabbing, I mean they swab your baggage and your coat and stuff like that to see if you've been near explosives and firearms and stuff like that. Julie, calm down. It's not like swabbing your DNA. But this is where things get really strange because, you know, there's no need to go in heavy-handed like that. But he then gets bail, and I take it this is police bail. And I'm not sure if he's been charged with anything. He didn't say anything in his his update on his page, his Substack page, I think, which I read earlier this morning. The bail condition is he can't use Twitter while in the UK. Well, I hope they said X, because if they said Twitter, that would be fine, because then there would be no barrier to him putting it on X. But, so this is the Britain we live in today. You can be banned from social media for expressing opinions. And as part of the interview, you know, it was 3 jokes that he'd put up, or 3 replies that he'd put up in a jokey manner. And one of them did suggest a woman should strike a man in a certain part of his anatomy if he tried to do something, but it was nothing. It was no consequence, really. So to do that was a bit strange. So Graham points a finger at a chap that he's had dealings with before, someone called Lindsay Watson, who is a disgraced former police officer from Leicestershire Police, who was fired for gross misconduct. Now, I believe Lindsay, Ms. Watson, may be a transformer. And this is where it gets a bit weird, because they were kicked out for gross misconduct in 2023. And this charming individual sent over 1,200 abusive messages to Harry Miller, another former police officer. And the same Harry Miller who started Fair Cop after his own harassment by the Thought Police. So, starting to look a bit strange here. Bit strange. So Watson didn't stop at harassing Miller. He filed... I can't say he, can I? This person, this specimen of humanity, filed 60 reports to anti-terrorism units against people... Anti-terrorism units with gender-critical views. 60 reports. Now, that's not activism. That's pure and simply a full-time job, reporting people and harassing innocent people. The piece de resistance, senior officers at Leicestershire Police. Supposedly the guardians of law and order advised Watson to create fake Twitter accounts to continue the abuse and continue his campaign of harassment. The police facilitated criminal harassment and circumvented Twitter's terms of service. So that's what happened this morning. And we think it may be connected to this Lindsay Watson person. And Graham's probably certain that it was them that reported them. How do, Chris? So it gets better. It gets better because now we start to dig into the money. Let's follow the money. Because money talks and bullshit walks, and there's been an awful lot of walking being done on Twitter these days. An awful lot of walking. So I've been digging through the funding sources for UK trans rights groups like A Forensic Accountant on Speed. The results may make your head spin. So, let me see if I can pull it up. US funding... slides, here we go. Of course, because I use green screen, that's made that bit of the pie see-through. Not to worry. So I can explain. So the UK government funding to trans activist groups is 18.4%. The US foundation funding to UK activist groups is 65.2%. So 65.2% of their identified funding comes from the US, from US billionaires and their foundations, to be specific, and including the US government. So, let's go back to me. So nearly 2/3 of the money driving transgender activism in Britain comes from American billionaire foundations. Foreign interference? Yeah, I think that is foreign interference. No, it's not Putin. Nothing to see. Let's move along. Oh, good question, David Nolan. Good question indeed. Which foundations, eh? Well, let's have a look. George Soros' Open Society Foundation, over 50 million globally pumping this ideology. The Arcus Foundation, 74 million between 2016 and 2021, with 142,000 going directly to Stonewall. Stonewall, UK. Right before they decided LGB wasn't woke enough and added the T. So yeah. And then we have Atlantic Philanthropies chucked 11.5 million at UK LGBT groups between 2004 and 2013. That's 3 organisations. That's just 3 organisations there. Turning British society upside down with foreign cash. So there, on your slides now, should be some of the funding sources. You should be able to see them. Atlantic Philanthropies at the top, followed by the Arcus Foundation, Open Society, which is George Soros. What's that other one? The Novo Foundation, and at the bottom there, at 500,000, US aid. US aid. And you know what happened to US aid? Trump stopped paying it, which is fine. And then you think to yourself, that's the US government aid agency giving over £500,000 to Stonewall between 21 and 23. That's American taxpayers funding political activism to reshape British society. The irony would be hilarious if it wasn't so sinister, would it not? Is it legal? Well, yes, it is. So it's tax avoidance. People don't like that either, do they? Stonewall, we're not finished with them yet. Now, let's have a look at Stonewall. Stonewall's diversity champions scheme. And remember, the other night we talked about diversity and how diversity, identified by both the left and the right, diversity in our cities is causing our problems. You know, that's what's causing crime rates to go up, is breaking down societal cohesion. It's destroying communities. And it's going to get worse if we keep trying to introduce foreign cultures. Because, as we talked about last night, multiculturalism does not work. And even the Fabian Society recognised that in a 2016 report. So, Stonewall's diversity champion scheme, it sounds good. Like a rainbow-coloured protection racket. Yeah. Generated 2.4 million in 23 to 24. Now remember, that's under the Tories. So they generated 2.4 million in 23 to 24 from 165 public bodies in the UK. Police forces, NHS trusts, government departments, all paying Stonewall to tell them how to think. To me, that's almost like an extortion scheme. It's like a mafia. And yeah, it's perfectly legal. The Met Police spunked $8,500 on Stonewall programs. That's not a lot when you consider how many cops there are in the Met. Imagine if they'd spent more. And what did they get for their money? They got training sessions, right? Where activists called women, or where the activists said trans women needed saving from evil women who believe in biology. They called women defending their rights twisted and warped, while police officers sat there clapping like performing seals. That's actually giving them advice that goes against legal guidelines. That's crazy. The police are paying for this. The police are captured. I mean, we've seen that from Leicester, haven't we? You know, telling a guy to go and make false accounts on Twitter in order to continue a harassment campaign. And then we've got the Crown Prosecution Service. Eva Echo, who sits on the Crown Prosecution Service hate crime panel, influences who can and cannot get prosecuted, or who does and who doesn't get prosecuted. I'm not saying she makes the decisions, but she has an influence on the type of people that would and would not be prosecuted. And she says that trans people need saving. What do they need saving from? Themselves? From others? I'm not sure. Just think about that for a minute. We have someone who's an activist, an open activist, in a political organisation sitting on a government judicial panel that advises the prosecution service on who and when to prosecute. That's not right. That's just not right. So how did they capture the CPS? And the answer is, it's actually fairly simple. Training programs, guidance documents, personnel placement, classic entrycism tactics that would make Trotskyites proud. You're back to the long, slow march to the institutions. You get the people at the right time, you get them in the schools, you get them in the universities. They then go on to become lawyers like Keir Starmer. And then they go on and become more left-leaning. Next thing you know, some of them are entering the Crown Prosecution Service like Keir Starmer. A Fabian, right? Well, I mean, and quite obviously, quite upfront about it, but that doesn't matter. These people have the same ideology. And his ideology has helped to shape the Crown Prosecution Service. Because if you remember, he tells us all the time about how he prosecuted such and such or such and such when he was in the Crown Prosecution Service. But there was a marked number of people he never prosecuted that plenty of other people talk about. And we'll not go into that, but I think Keir Starmer's a wrong one. I really do. You know, I don't like him. And I've never thought that. I never said that I did. I'm not going down about that. Shalini will just let that one. So, right, let's zoom out a bit and see if we can get a bigger picture, because this isn't just a British or a particular peculiar to the UK scenario. This is worldwide. It's a coordinated international operation, and you can understand that because George Soros, through the value of his money, has his finger in an awful lot of pies. And it makes the Warsaw Pact look disorganised. I mean, the ILGA Europe coordinates LGBT activism across 54 countries. The EU's CERV programme hands out taxpayer money, EU taxpayers, to trans groups like Sweeties at Halloween. The Yogyata Principles, which, although it sounds like a yoga retreat, is actually the legal framework for embedding this madness into international law. And, you know, when they put these things into law, there's a minimum period that they've got to remain there. It's like when you put, when like the online safety bill, for instance, when it goes through and gets passed and goes as law, it's got to be there for at least 2 years before you can repeal it. They put these measures in so you can't just switch and swap laws, and they're hoping that maybe in 2 years' time the furore will have died down and people will just forget about it. And David, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I think, Darren, they were maybe involved in eugenics more than that. But anyway, we'll discuss that in another stream, perhaps. And here's a bit of detail. Adrian Coleman moved from George Soros' Open Society Foundation to become the Director of International Human Rights at Arcus Foundation. Now, while these things all look like separate organisations on paper, they're effectively not. They're effectively sharing premises on occasion and sharing personnel. It's like one big happy family, one big revolving door. They go out one door and into a job in the other place. So instead of defence contractors and the Pentagon, it's billionaire foundations and activist organisations reshaping Western civilization. This is corporatism at its very worst. This is what unregulated capitalism can achieve, because these guys have so much money that they can shape the world so as it benefits them more than anyone else. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, because they're making a shit ton of money out of this. And then we ask, opposition. There must be opposition to this. Well, there are. There are opposition to it. There's the institutions like the Policy Exchange, the Institute of Economic Affairs, the Centre for Political Studies. We talked about these yesterday. These are corporate-sponsored conservative think tanks, and they produce publications and stuff, and they do fight against this. And some of them are doing excellent work, but they're fighting with pea shooters against howitzers, because the opposition's working with thousands, if not millions of dollars, while this lobby is working with, small change. They're not getting the big bucks. So obviously those with the most money are going to make the most noise and get the most attention. And I mean, you've experienced this yourself. Even working, I worked for a bank before COVID, and you had to do these stupid training things. And technically, I was trying to argue, certainly, that as a contractor, I wasn't an employee of the bank, therefore I shouldn't have to do these. But the bank are freaking nuts. But they were how to deal with people and what to say to people and things like that. And you had to go through it and just tick the boxes. It's like when you get a strike on YouTube and they say you've been a bad boy, you need to take the training. And the training's not training. They just tell you what to say. That's not training. That's indoctrination. That's brainwashing. And that's what these people are doing. They are brainwashing the public. They're brainwashing corporations, and they're brainwashing public services. And that's why everybody's floating about frightened to say boo to a goose. Because if you've got a coherent mind and are quite happy in calling things out, you're going to get shot down. And we'll see an example of that, actually, in a minute. So, then there's also evidence the Russians are at it. The Russians spent 186 million on anti-gender movements across Europe between 2009 and 2018, but that's almost a decade. But they've spent more money than anyone else on anti-gender movements. But they're trying to influence an entire continent. And I can't see that as a bad influence. Who would have thought that the Russians aren't as bad as you think? The plot thickens. Progressive foundations we've discussed spent comparable amounts just on transgender nonsense in the UK alone. So while Russia spent 186 million on a continent over 10 years, Soros and his merry men have spent the same amount in just the UK. Now you know why it's a big problem. Because they're just throwing so much money at it. So much for our foreign interference being a Russian problem, huh? Right, so what does this clusterfuck actually mean? Because let's be in no doubt about it. This is a foobar of gigantic proportions. Why should you care that some comedy writer got lifted or that American billionaires are buying British institutions like they're shopping at Harrods? Why should you? Because it proves that not only democratic institutions, but public sector institutions like governments, the police, the fire, the ambulance service, RNLI, everyone has been captured, corrupted, and weaponized. You know, even ordinary citizens against expressing perfectly legal opinions. That's what's happening. You have a perfect legal right to express your opinion, and you're getting shouted down at every opportunity. And then they're going too far, they're overreaching, and they're arresting you. Remember, there's 1,200 people arrested every month in the UK for bad, offensive tweets. There's 400 arrested in Russia over a year. So we're arresting 1,200 every month. But of that 1,200, less than 10%, 30 of them, were prosecuted and found guilty. So less than 1%, sorry. I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of people that are getting arrested. So that tells me that the police are really overreaching. And the question is, who's driving the police to do that? Well, we know people like governments and Stonewall have all been corrupted by this brainwashing mass. This Soros is like Palpatine, isn't he? He is sitting there in his, whatever it is, chair, just rubbing his hands, thinking, I have them now. When police officers sound like gender studies graduates during interviews, when prosecution services take advice from the very activists they should be investigating, and when government departments pay ideologues to implement ideological policies, democracy isn't failing. It's already gone. It's gone. Did I miss a bit about... What did I miss about Graham getting interviewed? I think I missed a little bit about Graham when he was getting interviewed. Maybe there's more to come. Anyway, I'll come back to it if I've missed it. So what can we actually do? That's the question. What can we actually do? You might have a point there, Shalini. Evil and bad people do seem to live longer, don't they? So, awareness, share the information, support independent journals who aren't completely compromised, demand transparency at every opportunity about who's funding what. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, even for an institutional gangrene. Call out organisations. Political pressure. Write to your MP. Keep writing to your MP. You know, if you don't get sensible answers, keep writing to them. Ask the MP why police forces are paying activist organisations for training that contradicts legal guidance. Stonewall. Ask why foreign foundations can reshape British institutions while TV channels like Russia TV get blocked because, well, we're not at war with Russia, so why is it blocked? Why is it blocked? Because we might find out something that doesn't go with the narrative that's getting put out. And then there's legal challenges. Organisations like Fair Cop and LGB Alliance are fighting this through the courts. I think they've got a tough job, but, you know, if you can afford it, chuck them a few quid. You know? You can afford it, chuck me a few quid at times. But only if you can spare it. Nobody's going to ask you to give away loads of money. So Graham Linehan's case isn't really about transgender rights or hurt feelings or social media. It's about whether British citizens can express lawful opinions, and even, I'm not sure if Graham is a British citizen or if he's Southern Irish or whatever, it doesn't matter in my book, without facing terrorist level law enforcement response, because that is out of order. It's about whether British institutions serve British interests or foreign billionaires with messiah complexes, because that's what Soros is. And the next one will be Bill Gates or whatever, because Soros' son doesn't seem to be terribly bright. He's screwing up everything, you know. I mean, he's making a right mess of things. Go on, Alex, keep doing it. So when comedy writers get arrested like international terrorists for posting mean tweets, and when corrupt ex-coppers can weaponise complaint systems against their critics, when American foundations can purchase institutional compliance, we've crossed a line that democracies rarely come back from. And frankly, that should scare you. That should scare you more than anything else that's happening. So we need to fight against this. We need to organise, and we need to write to our MPs. We need to tell as many people as we can things like this. Share it out. We need people to understand what's actually happening. And it's going to be a long, hard slog, because you are fighting against a massive amount of money. It's like, you know, trying to sell your product by walking up and down the street with a sandwich board while every other advertising space has been bought by a corporation selling something that competes with you. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we have to do it. We have to keep doing it. When Graham was being interviewed by the police, he was asked about gender, and I think he asked the cop what he understood by gender, and the cop said the gender that he was assigned at birth, and that's not how a policeman should be speaking, because that's not a fact. People don't get assigned gender at birth. People are born and are biologically male or female. These are facts. As much as many people don't like it, these are cold, hard facts. And many scientists have been on all platforms saying that every fibre of your body, every cell in your body knows which sex you biologically are. Your DNA tells you. It doesn't matter what you do externally. It doesn't matter how many coats of paint you put on. You won't change what you are inside. And the police in particular shouldn't be spouting shite like that, because they should be dealing with absolutes. Yes, it's okay to use initiative and to deal with nuance on occasion where it's warranted. But there is no dubiety about sex. And that's the problem, because we are being told there is. That's it. Is it a problem? Do you think it's an issue? I don't know. I think it's an issue. J.K. Rowling thinks it's an issue. D. Jarry says the UK is done. 7-year contracts. Hotel owner rejects $3 million contract to house asylum seekers. Yeah, they would do. Yeah. You think how many have taken the money? Yeah, loads have taken the money. Loads have taken the money. The problem is, and we discussed this last night, there is no way that anyone who seeks asylum in the UK is doing it illegally, because international law states that you should seek asylum in the first safe country you get to. The UK is not the first country you're getting to if you're leaving Africa or Albania or Afghanistan. You are not coming to the UK legally. Therefore, you should be seeking asylum elsewhere. Therefore, everyone seeking asylum in the UK is illegally seeking asylum and has committed an offence in the UK. It's as simple as that. They're all criminals before they start. But they're not being treated like that. They're homeless power. We are. For making nasty tweets, saying things like that. And you might even find this gets taken down because of what I've just said. David, yes, you're right, David. Nothing is assigned. Oh, who assigned the animals in the zoo? Right, I think that's enough of tonight's descent into madness. I don't know about you, but I mean, I will, as I said, I'll put the receipts up and you can go through it, because there's a fair bit of information there. There's a fair bit of research. There's plenty of links for you to follow. I think the evidence is overwhelming. The patterns are undeniable. You know who's doing it. The money tells you where it's coming from. The money tells you who's doing it, and the money tells you why. I've got another segment. I don't know if we want to go into it tomorrow. About the amount of money that these guys are making and what's in it for them. And it's mental. 720 billion. Absolutely crazy. If you're liking these things, let me know. The website, sergeantgrumpy.com. Sergeant Grumpy, all one word. Nice and simple for you, because I know at heart you are simple people. But yeah, so I can only remind you to trust evidence, question authority, and never let activists pretend they're experts. And remember, in a world gone completely mental, being grumpy isn't just reasonable. It's a goddamn necessity and a moral obligation. And like they say, it's been great for you.